Today's episode of Bump to Business Owner is proudly sponsored by Accountant She, the disruptive, holistic and person-centered accounting team helping to take you from bump to business owner and beyond. From fully outsourcing your business finances to strategic and enhanced maternity planning, we've got you covered. And if you don't need an accountant just yet, but want completely free, accessible, consumable financial education, then you can find me everywhere that you consume content at accountant_she.
Hello, I'm Caroline Marshall, and welcome to Bump to Business Owner, the podcast speaking to mums in business, you. I'll be in conversation with some of the most inspiring women and mothers in enterprise about their journey, how they created their successful businesses alongside raising their children, and what that looks like in work and family life. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. Today, I could not be more excited to welcome a woman who I'm sure is fairly well known among many of our listeners and personally saw me through two extremely positive births. Let's clarify, not perfect, but positive. Siobhan Miller is the founder and CEO of the Positive Birth Company and best-selling author. Her book, Hypnobirthing, Practical Ways to Make Your Birth Better, has been translated into 5 languages and has sold more than 100,000 copies worldwide. Siobhan is the creator behind the Hypnobirthing Pack, the original and award-winning online birthing course, the Freya app and the Postpartum app. She has been featured on the BBC's Dragon's Den and been named as one of Management Today's top 35 women under 35. She also holds the Guinness World Record for most viewers on a hypnobirthing live stream. The Positive Birth Company's mission and reason for being: to make antenatal education and support more accessible for everyone. Siobhan started her business with a newborn, a 1-year-old and a 9-year-old. And now she juggles this business alongside being a mum of 4, devoting her life to helping empower and support people in their journey to parenthood. I'm so excited to welcome Siobhan.
What an intro. I'm like, oh my God, who is this person? I am not going to live up to this.
Oh, you definitely are. I love it. Everyone says that on the podcast, and I'm like, no, I think it's nice to have someone else introduce you because it's like, this is what you have done.
Yeah, like,
so that's
your
like
achievements. It's like, oh wow.
Isn't they're bringing This Is Your Life back? Did you feel like it was a bit like that?
A bit like that. I'm like, wow.
I love it. And well, thank you so much for joining, because I mean it when I say, I was literally talking to my husband in the car this morning. I was like, what do you want me to say to Siobhan? Because he's a big fan also.
Did he do the course?
My husband?
Yes.
I got him to watch the bit. So I'm going to start with this. So he was such a skeptic, which you must get a lot of. And he was like, oh, hypnobirthing. And then he was like, so I got him to watch the birth partner part and the science part. And because he's got a scientific brain. So I was like, Greg, you need to listen to this. And he was like, wow, this is just education. This should be on the NHS. So, and then when he saw me give birth, he was like, yeah, he's like such a fan now. So
amazing. I love it when you get a skeptic and they do the science bit and they're just like on board, because it makes sense. It's like, why did we not know this earlier?
Exactly. And that's what we were saying in the car today. I was like, can you believe we don't get told this in our like midwifery sessions or things like that? He's like, no, I still can't believe this. And
or even earlier, like back at school, when you're learning about how your body works and you're learning how not to get pregnant, I feel like there's a whole part of education about, you know, how to get pregnant when you want to and what happens to your body then. And that's just not discussed at all.
Because I talk about this a lot actually from the career side of like, oh yeah, you know, they want us to have a career, push, and then we have babies, and it's kind of like no one's prepared us for the fact that changes your career. But it's because you're right, they're so focused at school on like, don't get pregnant, and then it's like, well, you do want us to have babies one day, so let's like have a positive education on
we're
that.
sort of responsible for like continuing, you know, the population. So it's kind of a big deal.
Kids will be paying your taxes, your retirement one day. So that's like
even in primary school, they say, you know, like one of their kind of they've got school values at primary school, and it's all about this ethos of preparing children for the real world. But even I'm like, well then, you know, the real world is having families. Like that's a big part of the real world. And yes, there's never discussed how to manage a career with children, or how to get pregnant, or, you know, what to do when you are pregnant, what your body does. Nothing. It's just nothing is discussed.
And your hormones, what that might mean,
Yeah.
kind of thing. I'm like, yeah, if only we could fix the
Or
world in
beyond
that
the
sense.
menopause, you know, I'm still like really in the dark about that. I just know it's this thing that's looming, and it sounds really frightening. And I'm like, God, I need to get clued up on what that actually entails.
I know. I keep saying that to me as well, because for me, pregnancy was such a shock, and no one around me had like, my close people hadn't had it. My older sister
Yeah.
hadn't been through it, and so I'm like, menopause. Firstly, I'm not going to be the first.
Yeah.
Secondly, I've agreed that with Mother Nature. But
Yeah.
secondly, I need to actually be educated on it versus
Yes.
pregnancy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no. Well, no, thank you so much for coming. So our kids are 5 and 3 now. And
Oh,
so, and honestly, it's so exciting to have you here. But what's nice about this is talk about how you became your business tonight and what you've been through on your business journey. So let's start at the beginning. Where did your career start? How did you come to start the Positive Birth Company, for people who don't know you here?
yeah, so I guess it starts all the way back when I was 20, and I got pregnant when I was at university and had my son. He was born just after my 21st birthday, and I hadn't heard of hypnobirthing. So this isn't really this is like the origin story. This is
And was it really
pre-hypnobirthing.
around then? Like, what,
No, I'd never
do you
heard of
think
it.
that?
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was clueless, and I didn't have any money. I was a student, so I didn't, go to any kind of paid classes. I did go to the free ones that the hospital put on, so I learned some information, but generally I knew very little. I knew nothing about how my body would actually work in labour, or what might help or what might hinder. I was offered an induction. I say offered because that's what the language I would like to use, but actually I was told I was going to be induced, and it felt very kind of pressured. I actually thought that just meant my baby was going to come quicker, so I was really happy about it. I didn't know there was any risks associated with induction, and that was never made clear to me. Anyway, I went down that pathway. It took 2 days. I ended up in theatre, every intervention going, and by the end was just exhausted, depleted, hadn't eaten or slept in 2 days,
Oh gosh.
and just terrified, absolutely terrified by the end of it. Not, let me make this clear, because induction is necessarily terrifying, but because I was just so out of my depth and didn't understand anything. Really disempowering. And so after that, I suffered really quite badly with postnatal anxiety, which I attribute to that kind of traumatic experience. So yeah, it was not something I would look forward to doing again. It's just something I survived, and then life moved on. And then 8 years later, so I'd finished university. I'd got a job in marketing. I worked for a publishing company. I was, getting on with my life, and I got pregnant with my second baby. So this time I was 28, and obviously I was aware of people that had children now around me, or kind of like on social media, and I'd heard about hypnobirthing. And again, this is back in 2014, so it wasn't really hugely popular. But the few people that had done hypnobirthing were evangelical about it. I didn't meet
That was me.
anyone that was like, it's a waste of time, right? They were just, you need to do this. So I had no idea what this was, what hypnobirthing was, but all I knew was that everybody who'd done it raved about it. So I was like, it's worth a go. So I looked for a hypnobirthing course, and it wasn't easy to find one. There was none local to me. I had to travel about an hour and a half to go to the class. It was on the other side of London.
Oh wow, that was commitment.
Yeah, it cost over £300, so it was quite an investment. And I remember going there on the first day, and my partner said, I hope they don't make us do anything weird. I mean, we literally didn't know, well, we're going to be hypnotized, what was going to happen. So we had kind of put our faith in this based on other people's like singing the praises of it, but we really didn't know what to expect. And then, of course, we got there, the first bit's the science, and it's just light bulb moment after light bulb moment. And you're just like, whoa. Like,
Was that quite
why?
healing for your first birth
And
already?
yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. It immediately, it helped me and in fact, I didn't even think much about my upcoming birth. I just kept thinking back to my birth experience the first time. And it made so much sense why things happened the way they happened. And so all of the fear that I had about that experience being repeated, that question that you just asked actually just has reminded me, I remember feeling like really confident that that wasn't going to happen again. Even
Wow.
if the induction happened again, I would feel completely different and know how to approach it. And, I wouldn't lie on my back on the bed. I wouldn't do X, Y, and Z. I would do this.
Mm.
So I felt like, wow, although you can't control how birth unfolds, there is still a lot that you can control inside yourself. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can make these choices, and, I can use these techniques, and I have an understanding of what's happening.
Ask the right
Yes.
questions, like feel
So,
empowered to do
yeah.
that, isn't it?
So it really, really helped me make sense of that first birth experience and feel really kind of at peace with, okay, that's not what's going to happen to me again. And then, of course, I started feeling excited about, giving birth again. And genuinely, I felt excited. That's how I describe it.
Yeah.
And I did all the prep. I felt really close to my partner. I remember saying that even if the birth doesn't go how we're hoping, I still feel that hypnobirthing has been so massively beneficial, because I've been able to enjoy being pregnant. And I've enjoyed all the mindfulness stuff that we've done, the meditation, the like things that connect you with your partner,
Yeah.
connect you with your baby.
Made you relaxed.
Exactly. So I felt, I've had the benefit from this course already. And then I went on to have my birth. I planned a home birth. I gave birth on the sofa at home. It wasn't perfect. We talked about positive, not perfect. That, by the way, is because I think there's a lot of misconception that a positive birth experience is one that's, in inverted commas, perfect.
Yeah.
So, you plan to have a home water birth, you get a home water birth, that's a positive experience, and anything
Yeah.
else isn't. And that's so
No.
far from the truth. The positive experience is one where you feel, in control, empowered, you're able to make decisions that are right for you and your baby, you're listened to, respected, and you come out of that experience feeling good about it. That could be a planned home birth turned cesarean birth. It doesn't have to be straightforward birth. And actually, at the other end of the spectrum, you could plan a home water birth, have a home water birth, and feel traumatized because you weren't able to manage, the pain, essentially, and actually you felt really overwhelmed and frightened. And that could be quite traumatic, even though on paper it might look straightforward. So
No, so well, I actually ended up giving birth alone for my second. The
did
midwife
you?
didn't make it on time, but I wasn't traumatized by that. And like that experience, I just felt in control and fine. And it was my second as well. But I do know other people that have ended up giving birth alone, and they've had a lot of self-blame and not
Yeah.
felt the same. So
Yeah.
it really is
It's about
how,
the feelings rather
yeah,
than what's actually happening
yeah,
in the room, or how your birth actually happens. It's more about how you feel during that experience
yeah.
determines whether it was a positive one or not.
Mm.
So that's why I say positive, not perfect. We're aiming for positive experiences, not necessarily perfect, because of course there's so much we can't control.
There's so much you can't control, and I think about that. I had a very sick child with my second one, and I think so many people wanted to know why, and it's this control thing. And I think that's what a key part of birth is that so much they want to control so much, and we want to be able to
Mm.
control it. But you can set everything up to try your best, like
Yeah,
hypnobirthing,
yeah.
atmosphere, health, but there is
No,
stuff out of control, isn't there?
absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. So that's where the whole kind of positive, not perfect comes in. And my second birth was exactly that. I gave birth at home on the
Oh,
sofa. It was, I felt euphoric. I felt invincible. It gave me this complete sense of like confidence. I thought like, wow, it was amazing. But I then did have blood loss afterwards, and I had to go into hospital by ambulance. And then, unrelated to birth, I had an anaphylactic reaction to a drug.
oh, my stepmom did in birth, she was
Really?
allergic to something, and it just turned the whole birth around just because they didn't know she was
Yeah,
allergic to
I know. So I don't want
something.
anyone to be thinking, oh my God, does that happen when you give birth? Like, no,
No,
not
no.
normally.
Oh, poor
Um,
you.
so yeah, it was definitely not a perfect experience, but in terms
Yeah.
of how I felt about my birth, I couldn't have felt better.
Oh,
It was quite quick. I didn't have any intervention, didn't have any internal examinations, didn't have any pain relief. I just literally did my breathing, did my focusing, was at home in my lovely environment that I set up. I couldn't believe that I'd done it.
Yeah.
And, you know, when my baby came out, I was on all fours on the sofa. He was passed through my
Oh.
legs and I brought him up to my chest. And it was just absolutely incredible.
And the
And that's
power of you both went through something after with your seconds, but the power of that your birth was positive. So
yeah.
at least, you know,
Oh,
there's something, if that hadn't been and you went through that as well, it would have been a whole lot worse for
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yes, on paper it looks like maybe, you know, I would have been upset about things, but I couldn't
Yeah.
have felt better.
Oh,
I was euphoric. And so talking about the career path, you know, that was really what ignited my desire to teach hypnobirthing. And actually at the same time, although I had a job in marketing, I was doing a psychology master's because I really wanted to kind of change career and work in a role where I was able to help people. So these two kind of
oh
experiences were
yeah.
happening at the same time.
You're already on that
I
path
was
without
already kind of
knowing.
on that path. And then I thought I was going to become a clinical psychologist. I thought that was going to be my route. And then I had my baby and I was like, it was like I found my calling, you know, I was like, this is what I want to do. And that's how it started. So I graduated from my baby was born in December 2014. I completed my master's in 2015 and then trained to become a hypnobirthing teacher that year.
Wow.
So within a year of giving birth, I was a qualified hypnobirthing teacher, and I just felt so passionate about making it accessible.
I
Like
bet.
everybody who wants to do this should have access to this education because it's life changing. So
Yeah.
that's really how it all began.
Oh, love it. And I have a quick question because I talked about a minute ago, like how you have a career and then you don't know that changes. But for you, you've always had career and babies along the same time. What was that like with the job in marketing and being a mother as well? Because we all
Yeah,
find it challenging, and I can't imagine for you.
I, d- I don't know because I don't know what adulthood without a child is like.
Yeah.
You know, I was a child. I went to school. I went and did my A levels. I went to university, and I had a baby. You know, in my second year of university. And although I know I was over 18, so I was technically an adult, I think when you look back and you think of your 20-year-old self at uni, I was definitely a kid. So
Yes.
I in some ways it's easier because I didn't have a life that I had to then kind of give up to become a mother. And I
Mm.
think about people who have had like established careers, who've had a lot of freedom, disposable income, you know, able to go out for meals with their husbands or, you know, go on holidays, and then they have a child. It's such a massive shift
Mm.
that it can be very difficult to like get used to.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
I,
hard relates to that.
yeah,
Yeah, so
and I didn't have
that's an
that.
interesting perspective, yeah.
I was just a kid and my life was changing quite rapidly at that time anyway. And then I was a kid with a baby. And so, you know, I just finished my degree. I used to take him to uni with me in a baby car seat.
Oh,
And I used to
amazing.
breastfeed him in the student union bar. And then I would go and put him in the seat and put him underneath the desk and he would sleep. Um,
Oh,
it was,
wow,
yeah,
he's really been on that whole journey with you,
yeah,
and,
we've
like,
just grown up together.
and
And
they were
now,
understanding in the working world kind of thing? So you didn't c
so no, so when I was working, then it was quite hard. So
Yeah.
he was at school and I would literally drop him at the breakfast club at 8 a.m. every day. Then I would cycle to work. Then I would work. I would get back on my bike straight away after work and I would cycle back and pick him up from the after school club. So he
Mm,
was, yeah, breakfast club, school, after school club, 8 till 6, Monday to Friday, um, you know, from the age of 4
yeah,
so
and
that I
that's all
could
you
work.
knew. Would you
That's
have
all
ever
I
thought
knew.
about asking flexible working, or was that not even, like
No,
no.
yeah, no, it wouldn't. Well, it wasn't even a term like you're talking about, you know, 14 years ago.
Yeah,
Um, I yeah, didn't know about that at all.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, obviously didn't have much money at the start of my career, just trying to make ends meet. So I didn't have that whole going out for drinks after work in London. You know, I never had that like life.
Yeah.
That yeah, I just used to get on my bike, get home, and pick him up. And I always used to be really excited to pick him up and feel
Aw.
yeah, like really happy. And um, we had a little flat and lots of people would come over. I think I had something different that my peers didn't have. So they tended to live in like big house shares
Yeah.
um, that were quite messy and grotty. And I had this like little quite homely little flat with Oshin. And so I think, you know, you can always think the grass is greener. I think people used to like coming over to mine and we'd have dinner and it would be like a nice a nice place.
Be a home, because you'd make it
Yeah,
a home for you and
yeah.
your family.
So I often used to have friends coming over for dinner, and I don't know where I got the energy from, because I think now maybe it's being older, 4 kids, I don't know,
You've
but
got 4 kids now,
I
yeah.
look back and I think I don't know how I did it. I don't know. But I don't
I
really
think you
even I
do
don't even
that a
remember
lot.
feeling tired. I don't even remember
Really?
feeling tired. That's the
Was he a
crazy
good
thing.
sleeper?
He was probably a good sleeper, but like even sometimes when I did have someone to babysit, I'd go on a night out,
Mm.
and then I would be back and up the next day and obviously looking after him. And I just think, oh God, that would kill me now. I wouldn't be able to manage it.
I think that must have been the benefits of age,
Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
being like a young mum definitely had benefits.
Oh, that's so interesting to hear. Thank you, because I'm just fascinated, because then it's just interesting to know how far we've come, while it's still a push and things that you would not have even, obviously money was part of it, but flexible working wouldn't have been something you'd
Mm.
ask for. And I guess all in person as well. You wouldn't have even worked from
No
home, would
remote
you?
working. No, there was
Yeah,
no work from home.
yeah,
No, not at all.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was very kind of structured, like in the office. And obviously, I realised at some point in that journey that wasn't what I wanted to do forever. And so that's why I started the psychology masters, because I wanted to do something else. And then, of course, when I had the 2 little ones, so after my second birth, I got pregnant unplanned 6 months later. So I have these 2 little
6
boys.
months.
Yes,
Oh my
I know.
goodness.
It's wild, isn't it?
Oh, I struggled with 2 years apart with my 2 boys. And
But you know what? I've learned so much over this whole thing. So, like,
yeah.
my third child was a big surprise, and as was my first. My second and fourth were planned. And I've learned that, like, I put so much planning around. I think we'll talk about that in a minute, about the fourth baby and having this maternity leave for the first time in my life.
Mm.
And it did not go as planned. And I put everything possible in place. Whereas
Oh.
my third was a surprise. And actually, I got through that okay. So I've kind of learned, like, you can do planning and it doesn't always go the
I
way you
love
want.
this.
So
It comes full circle round to the control thing
yeah,
again. Like, you did your best and it didn't work out. So let's definitely talk about that in a
yeah,
second. What I'd love all first to talk about is like the launch of like the online side of it,
yes,
because that was really innovative. That's like changed it, I think. Your
yeah,
business really has. And I know you won't say it yourself, but from someone who's not in this world, but you launched the online pack the year I had my first baby, and it was already like known about enough to get to me.
yeah,
What did that look like in practice when you were like, I want to bring this to more people?
yeah,
How were you like, how are we going to do this?
yeah. So I mean, it was just me at the time.
Yeah.
There wasn't a we. It was
Yeah.
just me on my own. And I had obviously so I had Albie very soon after Arlo. So I had these 2 little babies, and I was going around teaching in person, and I felt like there's got to be a better way. And I was starting to make YouTube videos. And I thought, what is there stopping me putting the whole course like online, like to make it
Mm.
digital? And that doesn't seem very innovative now, because I know there are so many online hypnobirthing courses, but back then there wasn't.
Yeah.
So it was like a new way of doing things. And so I had a friend who was a videographer, and she lent me her equipment. So she came round and set it up in my living room, and then kind of left me to it for a few days. So when the children were in bed in the evening, I would go downstairs, switch on all the lights she'd set up, and switch on the camera, switch on the mic, and I would teach essentially to the camera. And so then I had got all the footage, and she helped me edit it all. And yeah, I kind of put it together, did some research, found out about a platform called Teachable, which
Yeah.
is a really good platform for kind of online courses. And so I uploaded it, and I had my own personal Instagram. I didn't have a business Instagram, and I was just kind of talking on there about what I was doing. And this is probably like, this is, well, what year are we looking at now? 2017?
2017. Yeah, because
2017, yeah.
you
It's
launched
been launched 2018,
2018,
yeah.
just because same age as my
Yeah,
son.
so quite a while ago. And I was talking about what I was doing, and I was really, talking about wanting to make it accessible. That was my mission, really. And so I had a lot of support online just from that, really.
Yeah.
And then I released it in April 2018. And honestly, I thought that I will continue teaching in person. And then this is kind of like a secondary thing that I can offer people. So if they can't afford to attend an in-person class, because there has to be a cost with that because you're hiring a venue and stuff. So you can never kind of make it so cheap. And then, or if they can't get to it because they live, far away, or if they can't get childcare, all of these reasons, it offers this flexibility. And honestly, I thought that was it. It was going to be this like secondary thing to the main thing I was doing, which was teaching in person. And it just took off. And honestly, I had no advertising. I had no investment, no money, I was just kind of living moment to moment with,
Did that feel scary? Like, oh, this is going
it was just
so well, so
crazy.
quick.
Yeah, yes. And I was like, it can't be sustained. What is happening? Like it just went crazy. And like I said, I didn't even have a business Instagram or any sort of business social media. It was just my own social media. I can't even remember what my handle was at the time. I literally can't even remember what. I was called a double mama because I had 2 children, but actually I had 3 children. So I was like the double mama who had 3 children. Yeah, it was like
in brackets in your bio, who has 3 children.
Yeah, I was like, do I change to the triple mama yet? And it just took off, and it was crazy. And then it was a case of trying to keep up with the demand from a kind of customer service point of view and everything. So
that's really hard for small businesses that kind of kick off, isn't it? Because I think people expect like John Lewis responses to like
there being this big infrastructure,
one-man bands.
And obviously I wanted to make sure that everything was the best it could possibly be. And so I put a little kind of job ad, I'd say you'd call it, on Instagram. Again, I've got no HR background, so I was kind of like, need help urgently, help required.
Inquire, send a letter.
And I got inundated. I remember inundated.
I bet.
Wanting to work for me. And I was reading these CVs, and these were like people that were highly qualified. Like I would think they were like way more qualified than myself. Maybe not in birth, but they were like doctors and scientists. And I'm reading these incredible women's CVs. Like, why on earth would you want to come and work for me? Like, I'm just here in my living room, like, doing something I don't even know what I'm doing. I was just like overwhelmed with these people that were like just these incredible women who were applying to work for the business.
Wow.
I just did. And then I had a message from a friend saying, I've just seen your ad. I'd love to do this. So I was like, great, well, let's just do that, because I don't even have time to like, go through all these people's CVs and interview people. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I just need help. I did actually. I remember writing back to every person that had sent their CV in and writing a really nice email to be like, I cannot believe you want to work for me. Like, I cannot. I'm like in awe of you. So I did reply to everybody.
Oh.
But yes, I had my friend Chloe started working with me. And so that was in the end of 2017, actually, or beginning of 2018. And she's worked with the business for 6 years, and she's only just finished now and gone to do something different. So
what's that like? That was so hard.
Yeah, well, it's changed so much over the years. So we now have like an office, and she lives in a different part of the country, and she was potentially going to move to Devon, but then she moved to Worthing.
Oh, so I've got friends in Worthing.
She was the only remote person. Everyone else was in the office. I think it can be quite isolating. And she'd done 6 years, which is a long time. So big loss, but
wow,
I completely understand.
But it's these things always end up being good. Like change is good for a business. Like you don't. It's that.
But she was like my right-hand woman for so long.
That must be so hard, especially as your friends. It's just when you're having a panic moment, you're like, oh, help.
Because when we started, we both lived in London in the same area.
So you were in London,
Yes. So we both lived in the same area. We were able to like meet and work together. So that was
pop
quite
to each
good.
other's flats and things.
But over the years, obviously, we've ended in different places, and
And so this was your 3rd child at this point.
Yes.
You had your 3rd, and wow. So it all kicked off, and like, what stage did it come where you got to a stage where you're like, I need a team. This needs to change. Did
I
you move to
know.
Devon? What happened? You moved to Devon or?
Sorry. So I'd moved to Devon. Yeah, I moved to Devon, and so it was Chloe and I for quite a while, and I just worked. Honestly, I worked crazy hours. I literally worked crazy hours. I wake up, I'd be like on the laptop, and then I would work till the early hours of the morning, and
You lived and breathed it.
that's all I did. Like, I didn't have a life. I didn't see friends. I didn't exercise. I don't advocate this for anyone, but it was just crazy. And I didn't mind though, because I was so excited and so passionate about it that it just fueled me to work like round the
Yeah.
clock.
I
And I
think the
literally,
key
did
is
everything.
recognizing when to stop that, I think, because you can't live like that
Yeah.
forever, can you?
No. And I was so scared of like taking that step to like getting employees and kind of being responsible for people's pension contributions and being able to provide and be sure that this was going to be a long-term employment that I could offer them, because it just went so fast that I was like, this can't last. This surely can't last. So it became, I think, the first person that was an employee was Ella, who worked at the Grow company, the Grow
Oh
bags,
yeah, yeah.
and she did
Oh
social
yeah.
media, and that was based down here in Devon. And I met her in a coffee shop in Exeter. I'd never interviewed anybody in my life, and I was like, don't really know what I'm doing here. And so she became the first employee.
Oh.
And then it was quite organic, really, as we felt like, oh, need another person. So then we got another person, and then
It
there
felt
wasn't.
less scary then, because I
Yes.
think, do
Well, I
you
mean, I think
think,
the fear never leaves you, to be honest. When you're holding the
yeah.
reins, you have all of these people's livelihoods. Like, I find the weight of that responsibility a lot, and it doesn't really ever leave, I don't think.
And do you think it's hard, especially like in mumhood in the early years when you got such dependence on you? Because that's, I think, upsource. I've got all freelancers at the minute, but it will get to a point I've got to bring on employees. And I think there's something in me especially the past few years, it's been like, nope, can't do that. Like, can't have that the extra
Yeah.
responsibility when I've got all this responsibility. Do you think
Yes.
there's a bit of that?
Yeah, it's a lot. And I've really struggled with that, like the
Yeah.
kind of weight of the responsibility. And as you get more employees, there's more responsibility. There's more, people. I want to say problems is the wrong word, but every.
People do bring problems, not to
Yes.
sound awful,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
everyone you listen to has a people business.
Yeah.
And I've listened to podcasts where they've said, I would never have a people business again. You've got to be of an ilk to be able to be like, support everyone
Yeah.
but also have boundaries as well.
Yes. And I found that really difficult, and still to this day, it's something I really find particularly hard, and especially my kind of experience of maternity leave that I've just had.
Please, can we talk about
Yeah.
that? Because
So
now
it's,
I feel like we're naturally
my,
getting to that point. So what did the planning look like because you planned your baby and you did
yes.
everything right?
Yeah. So I'd come from having never had a maternity leave. So I had my first son when I was at uni, and I was straight back at uni. I think I had exams 6 weeks after he was born. I was back doing
Wow. I just want
coursework
to give like
assessments.
21-year-old Siobhan a hug. Like,
I
oh,
know. So
bless you.
never had a maternity leave. With my second and third, I was studying after my second, doing my master's, training to become a hypnobirthing teacher, setting up the business. When I had my third, I'd already started the business. So I was teaching, and I was going here, there, and everywhere in the country, kind of taking him with me, finding people to mind him, pumping, expressing, bottle, like the whole lot.
Yeah.
Just from straight away, really, when he was just a couple of weeks old, I was doing that. So
Yeah.
I'd never
Wow.
had maternity leave, and so I really, really wanted to have a final baby. I had this desire, I don't know why, just really had this feeling that I wanted to have my final baby, and I really, really wanted to have a maternity leave for the first time in my life. I have absolutely no regrets about my business, but the sacrifice has been that I never got that time with my babies when they were little. And I just don't think it's possible to do both. If there's a way to be a present mum, soaking up every minute, and running a startup business, I mean, I just can't see how that's possible. So that was a
Thank you for
sacrifice.
sharing that. That's just so honest.
I
Like, I
just
feel
don't
like
think
we need
that's
a bit
possible.
more of that honesty. Like,
Unless you can clone yourself and be two people at the same time, it's just not possible. So that was a sacrifice I made. I don't regret it, but I didn't want to do that again.
Mm.
So I wanted to have this baby, and I was prepared to wait for as long as it took till I could be in a position where I could take that maternity leave and really have that special time and soak it all up, because this was going to be my final baby. And so what I did was a lot of research about, what a business needs. Whereas before, like I said, I was just kind of winging it and you kind of going along and learning on the job.
Yeah, trial and error, basically, which a lot of
Whereas
founders
this I
do.
did research with, and so decided to go down the route of having a senior leadership team. And so having a kind of head of marketing, a head of ops, a head of HR and people, and putting in place this senior leadership team, which meant that they would run the business and I would essentially be not required.
Like founder stepping away, basically, which I see all the time does need to happen in businesses at some point. And what size is your team at the business at this point in an employee count?
Probably 12, I'm thinking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah.
So and the business was going well. And so it took a long time from that start of that process to recruit people, to train people up, and obviously then at the same time start the process of trying to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And so that got all the people in place, so I think at the peak then it's probably 15 people working in the business.
Wow.
And it was going well.
Incredible.
And I was pregnant, and it was summer 2022, and I felt so happy and so full of hope that and so grateful that I was having this baby at how old was I? 37. I felt so grateful that I was able to have this baby that I'd wanted for so long, and so many times thought I wasn't going to be able to. So I was so happy.
It's been a real business goal to get to this point as well.
Yeah, and the people
which is
in
lovely
place,
to hear.
and business is going well, and the people are great. And yes, the hope was high. And I think this is the downside of planning. When I found out I was pregnant with Albie, as I said, unplanned, massive surprise, just rolled with it. This was very different, but I had such high expectations. And that is where it creates the problem, doesn't it? If you've got the high expectations.
I do think that sometimes, I kind of embraced that parenthood was going to be really hard because I hadn't prepared for it. Whereas I think a lot of people, if you try and try and try, you're like, oh, it's going to be perfect when I get pregnant or when I do this.
That was the problem. So so everything was in place. I had my baby, and that's when it started going wrong, in inverted commas, because I planned to have a home birth. And when I was in labour, there wasn't enough midwives because of the midwife crisis. So I had to transfer into the hospital when I was kind of, when she was coming out.
You were ready to push.
Yeah, my body was already pushing. So I had a very comfortable car journey, got to the hospital, gave birth in about 8 minutes of arrival.
Yeah.
Could have done, you said you gave birth at home alone because the person didn't get
but my first was at the hospital, but I did all the birthing at home because they kept saying, oh, it's not happening. It doesn't happen this quickly. It doesn't happen this quickly. My husband is like, it is happening this quickly. So I know that uncomfortable car journey because I had to, so my first, I was needing to push in the car and holding back, and then did as soon as I got to the hospital in the lift. Well, not in the lift, but was like, I'm ready. And then my second, the midwife didn't make it on time.
And so you had your home birth?
Yeah, she arrived 5 minutes later. So thank goodness she was there for the placenta, which was, I don't want to do that on my own.
So I mean, that could have been my story, but I got in the car.
Which I think is the most sensible one.
I don't know. I look back, I don't know. But anyway, so that kind of was a big disappointment. I felt really disappointed. I think I would have been able to make peace with it if there'd been more like a medical reason to go into the hospital.
Yeah.
But it was so frustrating that the national crisis, or whatever we're calling it, the fact that the NHS is on its knees and there's not enough midwives and it's been underfunded and for so long, that's the resulting consequence. I felt so sad about that. I've spent so much of my life working to help people have positive births, and then I finally get to have this baby that I waited for so long, and it's like there's not even midwives. It's just
I'm not being
shocking.
supported.
Yeah.
I've put
Yeah.
so much energy into supporting others, and now I'm not being supported
Yeah, it
due
felt
to the
gutting.
system.
Yeah, due
Yeah.
to the system. Not to blame
Yeah.
anybody. Midwives are amazing. Just the frigging government, I suppose, is really who I've got the problem with.
Yeah.
Has created this problem. Like, anyway, so that was really like hard emotionally. I found that really hard and disappointing, because I know I won't get to do it again. That was my final birth, and
Yeah.
it was
Well, it
just
gives
not.
me goosebumps. It is sad when you
Yeah.
feel like that. I think as a COVID mum, I think there's a lot of COVID mums relate to that if it was their last child during
Yes.
lockdowns and
Yeah.
things. I
Yeah.
think because there's a lot of
You
first
don't get to
time
do it
mums.
again.
And I
Yeah.
think because I'm still not sure if it's my last. And I
Yeah.
think that's why I find it easier to make
Yeah.
peace with, because I'm on the fence.
Yeah.
My husband is convinced a
Yeah.
different way. But I think a lot were like, this is my final baby. And it's just
Yeah.
like, my husband's not been there,
Yeah.
things like
Awful. Yeah.
that. And it's again,
Yeah.
the system was,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
just kind of forgot about us, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry you went
Yeah.
through that.
Okay.
And
There was a
was
lot
it
of good
okay
bits
in
as
the
well.
hospital?
Oh yeah, it was fine. Like, I got
Yeah.
there, they'd actually got the pool ready, so I got into the
Oh, great.
pool. Actually, it was funny because the water wasn't working, so they were filling it up with buckets, and I just couldn't wait. So I just got in the pool and still throwing buckets over my shoulder, trying to fill the pool. So it was quite funny. But I gave birth
I
in the
relate
pool.
to that, actually. That was my husband throwing
Yeah,
saucepans.
it was funny, but
But it's disappointing, especially when you'd also wanted to live stream it to bring this positivity to everyone as
oh
well.
yes,
You
yeah,
weren't doing that for yourself, eventually. You're doing it
yeah.
for your mission.
Yeah, and you couldn't
You
do
have a
that at the
mission.
hospital. They wouldn't let the
Mm.
filming happen. And then afterwards, I mean, I gave birth like literally in minutes, and then I had all the checks and had my coat on to go home, and waited for hours because there was no one to even discharge us. It was just a bit,
Yeah, that's the point where you're like, I'm ready to get back.
And
And
when you
they
look back, I'm
can't.
like, why don't I just discharge myself and be like, see you later, guys. I'll see you tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't. In the moment, you're just waiting, waiting for someone to tick you off the list to go. And it's just like,
Yeah.
oh.
And that's the hard point. I think that must be hardest for you. Like you've just said it there. Why didn't I do this kind of
Yeah.
thing? And so you've
Yeah.
got to get through that process where you're not beating yourself up, because there's
Yeah.
loads of things. I'm like, oh, why wasn't I strong enough to do this
Yeah.
kind of thing? And it's a
And the
process.
thinking when you're in labor and having to make these decisions, it really makes the labor much more difficult. And I know that, and that's what I teach, but when you're actually in it, it's very hard when there's all this kind of chat going on, like, when's the midwife going to come? Is there a midwife? What should we do? Should we hang here? Should we wait there? Should we and you're having to think of it all. You're not able to be in your zone and relaxing. And
Yeah, even if you've got great people around
yeah,
you, you're
you're still
still.
like, what's going on?
Yeah, I think especially after your first. I think for me, my first was like ignorance was bliss, but with my next ones, I'm
Yeah,
like, right, okay, should I do this? Because this is what
yeah,
happened last time.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
hard,
well,
really hard.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. So anyway, so then have my little baby, and a few weeks after she's born, I get a email at 6 a.m. with one of the team saying that they wanted to quit, essentially, because of stuff that was going on in their personal life. So, I mean, that's obviously fine in a way, but I was shocked. And I had a tiny
Were
baby,
they on
and I
the
was,
leadership team?
yes, on the leadership
Oh
team.
gosh.
And I felt this also just to say, I'd worked obviously these long hours, so I was really, really ready to
Yeah.
hand it over. Mentally for myself, I was
Yeah.
I need to step back, and also I'm having my baby and I want to focus on it. So it was kind of both a desire and a necessity. I needed to step back for my sanity, and also I wanted to spend this time with my baby. And so I think it was about 6 weeks in that suddenly this kind of bombshell email, and I was just so out of the blue. So
6 a.m.
6 a.m. woke up, read it. I was like, what the hell? Shocked, and really then quite panicked, thinking I'm gonna have to go back to work. This is we need somebody, you've got to find somebody. So,
and you're literally weeks in to your
weeks in. And then thank God I have this wonderful friend called Molly who I contacted, and she used to work for the Positive Birth Company, and then she set up her own business, which is it's a community interest company called Body Happy Kids. And she's an author. She's amazing, all about your kind of body positivity and for children. And so I said, so she'd left to kind of pursue that full time. And I was like, this is my predicament. Is there any chance you could come back on a short-term basis?
A contract.
And she said yes.
Aww.
So she literally like saved me. And I was like, okay, massive relief. Molly is coming in. It's okay. There's a solution. Like, I can resume my maternity leave. So it was that kind of like rupture. And then I was like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Somebody's in. And so then it was like a little bit of peace for a while. And then somebody on the senior leadership team was pregnant, which obviously I was delighted for them. But that's another person now going.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
They hired maternity leave cover. So kind of like, okay, that's patched.
We'll sort it out.
Yeah. And so I kind of carried on. But there was these kind of, basically there was these big things erupting that were like, that were disrupting to the maternity leave, right? And you can't just hear about things and then just switch off. So you're kind of like pulled back in, in a way that I didn't really want to be. And then where does it go from there? So then I got told that things were not going very well at the business, as in quite going downhill, and costs were going up. And I had this very scary call with the new person who I didn't know, who'd come in on the maternity leave cover, who said that if things carried on going in the way they were, with costs rising and revenue down, then you would be in a situation where you're going to make a loss.
Oh, God.
And that was like an absolute shock to me. I always thought my business was going really well. Like, okay, I've never been a numbers person. I've always been 100% focused on the impact that I'm trying to make. And like, I haven't really ever kind of never had any forecasting or budgeting or anything like that. I just, yeah. If I've given the impression that I'm like a bona fide businesswoman, I'm sorry.
But we all go through these learnings where we've not got our hands on things. And I see it all the time with the work that we do with clients.
Yeah, it just flew, obviously, like I said, when the online course took off. So there was money coming in, great. I'm like reinvesting it. I'm like absolutely
putting the team in.
I'm like absolutely focused on the good things that we're doing. You know, we became a B Corp business. You know, we give tens of thousands of pounds to charity. You know,
mission led,
right? But perhaps at the detriment of actually looking at forecasting and numbers just wasn't ever something I did, right? Naive. Anyway, so this person in this accountancy role said, you know, if you're carrying on with the way that it's going, then it's going to be in a bit of a dire situation. So you need to do a restructure. So I'm like, oh my God.
A whole team restructure.
Oh my God. Like,
and what point of mat leave are you right now?
This is towards the end of my maternity leave now.
But still. Welcome back.
Oh, and sorry, so the friend that came and saved my life, doing that cover, obviously she was on just like a fixed term contract because she has her own business. So then they had to hire a replacement for her because she was never going to be there long term. So there was like a lot of change happening, you know, in that time.
Which you're also aware of. It's unstable for then team members. You want to stay there and continuity of business.
Yeah. So of these four senior leaders, one had left and then been replaced by somebody on a temporary contract, who then left because their temporary contract was up and they had their own business, and then they were replaced. And then the other person had gone on maternity leave, and a maternity leave cover had come in, and then two original people on the team. So that's quite a very tumultuous time. And then I'm being told there needs to be a restructure. And so I have no experience of this. I'm on maternity leave, and also I'm paying a senior leadership team. So I'm thinking like that's for your them job to then do that, right? Because, you know, I don't know about this stuff. This is not my skill set, and I'm actually on maternity leave.
And you've actually done what so many founders are told to do and don't do, is you're holding back not saying you're holding back.
I'm giving the autonomy.
And you've put in senior people, not you know,
4 senior leaders on
just out of uni from the business. Exactly. They've got the salary to be on that team.
Big salary. I think £250,000 had gone into this senior leadership team, right? So we're talking big salaries. And I said, well, this is, you guys, can you do this? Like, come up with what the options are, and then obviously present them to me and we can go through. Like, the last thing I want to do is for people to lose their jobs. So what can we do, essentially? And so everybody was very reluctant to do that. I think that's because everybody was very friendly. It was a very friendly environment, which makes it very, very difficult to talk about doing a restructure and people either being made redundant or their roles being made smaller or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. But I also feel like that's the team's responsibility, the senior leadership team responsibility, to have to do those difficult things. But it definitely got pushed back onto me. And so I found that really difficult because I hadn't obviously been in the business day to day. I was like, I don't really know what's going well, what isn't going well. And this is actually quite new to me and quite shocking. Anyway, long story short, the idea was that we didn't need 4 senior leadership people. We probably needed 1 to have like a smaller team and, you know, not have 4 big salaries. So you can imagine how awful that was to have to make redundancies.
Yeah.
And so...
And I wonder if that's why they were pushing it, like, to you, because they just knew you couldn't, they didn't want to be the one to go.
No, so they made me do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, in the end, I worked quite closely with the person who'd been brought in on the maternity cover, who was in that accountancy HR role. Obviously, that's the stuff she knows. And so one of the people resigned. So that made it slightly easier, I suppose.
Yeah. Helpful. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and gave a lot of notice, and so that was all fine. And then one person, unfortunately, was made redundant, and that happened just at the end of my maternity leave. And then that went awful. Like, on a personal level, it went so bad, beyond anything I could imagine. And still to this day, I don't know, you know, what really I personally have done wrong. But I have had so much hate directed at me, at my family, through the children. We were friends, kids at the same school. Like, honestly, hard to wrap your head around. So honestly, traumatized me, like literally left me traumatized to have to go through and come back from maternity leave to find out that your business isn't going well, having left it in a really good position, to find out that the people that you've trusted to run your business haven't done a very good job of it, that you're then being in a position where you have to make redundancies. And then when you have to do that because you haven't got any other options.
Which I see all the time in clients and businesses.
Is horrific. And to then have what has happened in the aftermath on a personal basis has just been like the worst time, and speaking honestly, has taken so much of my love for the business away. Like, there's been times where I've literally been like, I want out, like, I can't do this, like, this is so awful and it's killing me. And kind of around Christmas time, I was just really in a really bad way, very depressed, really kind of mentally in a very bad way, because it was just so distressing what happened. And that's not the end of the story. So then
I can hear it in your voice. Thank you so much for sharing. It's
just horrific. Honestly, it's been absolutely horrific. And then the person, so I'm trying to think who's left now. We've got, so one person resigned, one person was made redundant. We've got the maternity leave cover in place, and we have the new person that's joined. So the maternity leave cover, the person that I had trusted, the accountancy role, who had really helped kind of oversee this restructure, who honestly I had put all my faith in. I didn't know them before, they weren't a friend, so an unknown person who'd come into the business. I had kind of thought this person is like, thank God for them, right? Like, they understand the numbers, they understand the laws about redundancies, you know, they're really kind of holding my hand through this. A number of red flags started happening. The first was they went away on a 2-week holiday and they hadn't updated the holiday software. And when I went to update the holiday software, I found that they didn't have any holiday leave to take. So I was like,
they just took 2 weeks holiday.
That's a bit weird, right? So in this horrifically anxious time that I was in, I drafted this email, really carefully worded email. It took me most of the day to be like, hey, I've just been on citrus, like not really sure what's happening. Like I went to update your holiday, but you haven't got any holiday leave to take. You know, you can always ask if you want additional time off, but it would have to be unpaid, you know, but if you need to take a time out or a holiday, that's fine. Just please ask, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, got a very strongly worded email back saying that it was completely unacceptable to suggest it would be unpaid. I start questioning myself, honestly. By this point, I was just so like a shell of a person. I was like, is it unreasonable for me to make that unpaid? I'm like, or what? I just paid them 2 weeks extra holiday. Like, but then that's so unfair for everybody else. And
Yeah.
I'm like really kind of spiraling here, like what's happening? I then reached out to a very good friend of mine who works in HR, and she lives in New York. She works for Amazon. I've known her since we were 11 years old. And I was like, I need some help here. Like, this is the HR person, so I can't ask the HR person because this is her. And I sent her the things, and she is like, at what point did you think this was okay for this woman to talk to you in this way? And I hadn't even realized that she was talking to me badly on my life. Like, I had gotten so kind of downtrodden in myself, like my confidence was like rock bottom, that I hadn't even realized that this person was speaking to me in a negative way. And my friend with a fresh pair of eyes was like, you're literally being bullied in your own workplace. Like, how is this happening? Like, anyway, had a meeting with this person, still didn't think there was anything seriously wrong. This is when she came back from holiday.
Yeah, okay, 2 weeks holiday, what, you know. Yeah.
Anyway, so she'd gotten upset, said she was going to resign, that it was untenable to work for the company. I was panicking, like, no, I really need you, please don't resign. Like, I was in that state, like, no, please stay, you know. Anyway, we had a meeting and it was very strange, and she was upset and she was angry, and then she left, and I honestly, I just wanted out at this point. I couldn't cope with it. But she said she was leaving. So I went home, and there's a list of things that you need to do when you to offboard somebody. Normally, I wouldn't be the person to do that. That would be the HR person. But seeing as it's me, it was me. So I started, like, we have company Amex card. So I go on to log on to Amex. I've never even been onto the Amex site before in my life, right? Because I don't normally deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm like, really weird. 4.5 grand British Airways. What's that? Who's on British Airways? I go down, and there's another like 3.5 grand British Airways, business class flights to Canada return. Like, all of these transactions that have been made, like, to the sum, I think in total it's like £22,000, right? Yeah. So I'm like, I can't even believe what I'm seeing. I'm like, this can't be right. I ring Amex. They tell me about is it the Tinder swindler? Is it that? No, what was it? There was a Netflix show where somebody had like used an Amex card like for fraud. And they were basically telling me that this was a bit like that, you know.
Oh, wow. So you called them, they literally said that.
Yeah, they were like, this is a police matter. We can't help you because
Yeah.
this person was an authorized person to use the card. So Amex can't cover it. So even though she's used it in a way that wasn't intended.
It's not been stolen, essentially.
And that's why they were referencing this show, the Tinder swindler, because that's what kind of happened
I
on
need
that.
to go watch this show now.
She's like, you need to ring the police. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't even believe this is happening.
So when was this? End of 23?
No, this is January now.
This January.
Yeah,
So
this
literally
January.
a few months ago. Oh my goodness.
This, honestly, it's been a hell of a time. And I literally was like, I cannot believe this. I called the police, and they were like, you know, go through everything. And I became like a detective, and I uncovered so much fraudulent signatures, using other people in the company's emails to send emails to approve things, Xero, the accountancy software, changing all of that so that the transactions, like for British Airways, were renamed to something else and then attributed to another member of staff, so it would kind of fly under the radar. This individual had bought themselves a £63 bottle of champagne, expensed it as it being somebody's leaving present, but that person never received it. Okay, they'd also been on Bloom and Wild and bought a £98 bouquet of flowers and actually addressed the card to themselves from themselves. Like, honestly, it's wild. It could be a Netflix show.
This
like,
is what this is. Oh my, I am so sorry this happened to you, and I'm just trying to wrap around my head. So they were in charge of Xero completely. You had no external accountants that could be like call you and be like,
No, I do have an external accountant, but they would do the end of year accounts. So
Just
this would have
that,
been
yeah.
picked up in August, but obviously they would be gone because they were a maternity leave cover.
So it
So
was the maternity leave cover
the person I
for.
didn't know who'd come in
Oh
to,
my
yeah.
goodness.
So I had knew nothing of her. Like I knew nothing of her history or anything. I returned from
Yeah.
maternity leave. She was there. She was acting like the Messiah, and I thought, thank God for you. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh my gosh, it was real, like kind of making you
manipulative.
dependent. Yeah, making
Oh,
you dependent on
completely,
them. Yeah.
completely and utterly made me dependent on her and believed that she was going to like save the day. And I was in a very vulnerable position, just coming back from maternity leave, very vulnerable situation, being told the business was in dire straits, losing friends over it,
Yeah.
very
That's what I was
depressed.
to say. Was this because the stuff that happened with your friends and stuff, do you think the cause of it was this woman, really? Because you're like,
So,
I don't know what's happened.
so yes
Obviously
and
being made
no.
redundant's not pleasant. I get that.
Yeah. So yes and no. I think she definitely used that to kind of create a sense of urgency and stress, which then led to my dependency on her. Like I was
Mm.
definitely manipulated, but it is true that costs were going up, revenue was coming down. Like it was true that there was a situation where a restructure probably would be needed. So it wasn't
Yes.
completely
But then you don't
fabricated,
spend money on champagne and flowers to
but the
yourself when a
extent,
company.
yeah, the urgency of it and the stress around it, she definitely contributed to like creating that and using that to her advantage.
Oh my
um
goodness.
but yeah, I placed my full trust in her. And yeah, like I said, I was just off maternity leave, finding it really difficult with the friendship side of things. And
And it's
yeah,
really
she
hard
took,
when your friendships aren't working out, like in other ways for
yeah,
me, when I've gone through that, I'm like, that's really, really tough.
really.
And it
And I
comes
had
into
a new
everything.
baby, and I was like,
Yeah.
it was just not what I
Hormones
expected.
still as well. You're still feeding. You do have
Yet still
hormones.
feeding.
Yeah.
um And so, yeah, it was just absolutely awful. Anyway, she got arrested, she got charged.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I'm
it
like,
was
what
like
happened next?
literally, yeah, it could
Can we
be,
pitch this? What is going on
yeah.
here? So,
And
and what happened from there? Is you still in the process? Because this is all fairly
yeah, this is all
recently.
fairly new. So I went to the police station to give a statement, and I thought I was going to be there for an hour, and I was there for 4 hours. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever given a statement before, but they literally go through everything, and then they type it out themselves. So like you have to
Yeah.
explain everything, and then they write it, and then they say, is that how it sounds for you? And it's all, I thought I'd just write a statement, like a 1-page piece of paper, like summing up what happened. Anyway, it was very in depth, this whole investigation. Obviously, you had to provide everything, you know. But what was really crazy is when I got to the police station, which is like a local one in Devon, I got there, and all of these people coming out in uniform were like kind of moving quite quickly, and they were coming out of like the side door, and they had like stab vests on, and they were like, yes, I've got the gloves, and they were like moving quite rapidly. And I love true crime, by the way. I watch a lot of it, and I was like, oh, it's like the Totnes bomb squad. Like, what's
Yeah,
going on,
because you don't normally see that in Devon, kind
No,
of.
what's it called? SWAT team. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's like the Totnes SWAT team. Like, where are they going? And I
Yeah.
remember thinking, like, oh, a bit of like drama. Anyway, then when I go to have my interview, they're only going to arrest her, that team. And I was like, why so many? And he said, oh, because 3 trainees, and they all have to have a qualified person with them.
So
So
they were
so
going to arrest her.
6 people in 3 squad cars went to her house to arrest her for fraud.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh
it
my
was like,
goodness.
when I went to give my statement, my impression was I would go and write a little piece of
Mm.
paper, and someone would take it and file it away in a back room, and I don't know what was going to happen.
And then someone would, I'd assume in my head, someone goes
Yeah.
around to her house and gets her point of view, and then
Yeah.
legal proceedings
Yeah.
would start and it'd be long and drawn out. No, I'd
Yeah.
I'd be on your
Yeah.
side. I'd be like, this is
So
not
I
a.
was like, oh my God, like, this is crazy. And you know what? The fact that it was so crazy almost pulled me out of the fog that I was in.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
was it validating that you weren't
Yeah. So it almost
going
like,
crazy? Not to sound like that,
yeah,
but
no, I
it
had
was
gotten so
validating.
low that I was like not wanting to get out of bed. I just didn't
Oh
want to
my
face the
goodness.
day. I was like
Yeah.
so depressed in December. And this kind of learning in January, honestly, it reignited me. I was like a detective. I felt like, oh my God. And I was finding out stuff daily, uncovering more. The police were asking me to send it over. It
Yeah.
it re-energized me in some weird way. So I suppose I have that to thank her for, that it
Yeah.
got me got me out of bed and it got me back in the game. And yeah, so they arrested her. I provided all of the evidence. She ended up admitting to it. So there's two pathways. You can either have a caution, which doesn't sound very much, but actually does stay on your record for 10 years, I think, or you can go to court, but that can take years because of the backlog in the system, and then you might not even get the outcome that you want. So I was advised to go down the caution route, and so that's what happened. And she was recently cautioned, and yeah, that's it. Oh, and I got some money back as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
yeah, I guess because credit cards, I guess, like
she repaid some of the money, I think, because her solicitor would have said it would look better for her if she said sorry, repaid, and then some of the companies that she'd bought stuff from refunded the money.
Oh, that's good.
So because they hadn't been, the things that she'd paid for hadn't yet been used, so they just cancelled and refunded. So I
feel like I'm still processing this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still processing this. Yeah.
But it's also like, I can imagine, because if it'd be so tempting to go down the legal route, but also that would have been a job for the next few years, like your job.
I didn't want it. Yeah, I didn't want it.
I can see why you didn't want it. And I think that's why sometimes people don't go down this route in various scenarios. Yeah.
So
wow,
I want to do a podcast called True Crime at the PBC, because honestly, or pitch this to Netflix and be like, this has been wild.
And then can we have this podcast on there? So that
Siobhan
tells her story finally.
This is the first time I'm telling this story like publicly.
That is wild. And I'm so sorry, because I feel like I'm often talking about maternity leave, and you can do it from your business, but it's so important. And this is the extreme end.
This is the extreme end. This is not going to happen to everybody. But for me, I did so much planning to have this time. And from 6 weeks in, it just started unraveling to this massive crescendo of actual criminality. And I think also just I was, before even this, just kind of in that time when I was away. And I think this is probably the biggest problem if you are a founder trying to take a maternity leave, is once you're not there and you've taken your foot off the pedal, are people going to keep that momentum going and work really hard and do their best? Because I think people are never going to have the same passion and dedication as you to your business. And that can go from kind of at the lower end, people just not caring as much as you, they're not going to care as much as you about your business, to people actually taking advantage. And which is kind of what I think was happening with my team a little bit, is that I wasn't there to oversee things. People could just kind of shrug it off, or that didn't happen. They still get paid. I created such a lovely kind of comforting environment, work culture. It's like free lunches, spa days. I really treat my team really well.
You really tried to.
So all of this stuff was in place. Exactly. Flexible working, like the whole shebang. Like it's such a wonderful place to work. And I think when I was not there and I wasn't kind of driving things forward in that kind of mission-led way that I do, people just started kind of cruising along, like, this is nice, we've got, it's a really nice setup, it's easy, getting paid, can work from home, not work from home, can basically do what we like, and no one's here to oversee it. And so that whole momentum of the business that was there, that was probably being driven by me, that was not there. So I think
you didn't have anyone on your side in that sense as well. Kind of
started going downhill, and no one holding anyone to account, and everyone being friends, so nobody kind of wanting to kind of confront anybody else.
Yes, you see that a lot, the problematic side of business, where they say we're families and things, and it's like, well, to an extent, because family, you are there no matter what, and it's like business, that can't always be the case.
So it was a big learning curve, and I think obviously it's very real time now, coming back from this. But the truth is, when I started my business and I had this mission and nobody else was doing this, and I was absolutely determined to make hypnobirthing accessible, I would work day and night, and I was just absolutely motivated. So much has happened since that point to where I am now. And, now I have, this big desire still. My baby's just one, I still have this desire to be present with her, especially like in this time before she starts school. I'm not going to have another baby now. This is it, right? So I really, really want to make that a priority. And yet I have this business that really needs me to be there. So I'm being pulled in these two directions. The mission of wanting to make it accessible, to a degree, we've achieved that. And, online hypnobirthing courses are really popular now. There are so many people offering it. So that kind of mission that I started with has almost happened. And now it's about sustaining a business.
Yeah.
And actually, that's not something I've ever been driven or motivated by. I'm not someone that comes from a numbers background or a business background. Like I told you, no forecasting. And actually now my day-to-day job, that's what it is. It's doing the jobs of the people that aren't there. So the numbers, the payroll, the HR things, contracts, people problems. And that's taking me away from time with my baby. And that love and passion isn't there. That's not to say it's not there for what the Positive Birth Company does, which I believe in 100%, but I'm not doing that anymore. Do you know what I mean? I've kind of moved into
You've
this
done what they say everyone, business owners have to do, basically.
I've moved into this more like leadership role that I never really wanted. And I've tried to create a team where other people were doing it, and that didn't work. So I'm now in a position where I'm trying to hire an MD. So I'm kind of going in that recruitment process. So hopefully that works
just
out.
one person who leads it. And I'm glad this experience hasn't put you off that, and you're going to try something new. It shows.
I still believe in the Positive Birth Company so much, and like day to day we get tons of messages from people saying it's changed their life. And so some days I feel like I can't do this anymore. This is just all too much for me. But I feel so like I owe it to the business, to the community that the business serves. Like I want it to continue, even if it's not being led by me, ideally not being led by me. I want someone to take the reins.
You'd still be that.
Continue doing this good thing that the business does. But so it's been a bit of a ride.
It has. And thank you for sharing that, because it is so easy. You could easily not. And in 2 years, when maybe things have changed, your daughter's at school and you've got all this some fire, it might be fire in a different way, but it will come back in a way.
Yeah.
You could easily then share this in retrospect. And so I really respect you sharing this now, that you're like, this is what has happened to me. I'm still reeling, I'm still processing it.
I don't know where the end is. I don't know what's going to happen.
And I'm about to go on this new journey where I don't know. And what's your team size like now that you're leading?
5.
Yeah. So,
a lot smaller.
Yeah. And, that's probably right for now. And hopefully you'll get your MD and see if you want to grow, kind of thing. Because I think that's what a lot of companies are learning. It's all about growth. And maybe it's just about creating. I went on a course recently, great businesses, which yours is already for what it's done.
And it would be such a shame. Shame isn't really the right word. It's greater than that if it just closed down because I wasn't able to do it anymore. And that's not what I want to happen.
No.
So I really hope that I find the right person for this role who's going to be able to take this, what I've built, onwards.
Any MDs out there want to let's put it out to the universe. Honestly, Siobhan, I respect you so much. I just saw I'd seen a little Instagram post last year on this, that things hadn't gone to plan, and I was like, I need her on the podcast.
Oh my God, I was having a breakdown then, I think. Yeah, that's when I was
I think that's the beauty of podcasts and beauty of people like you being like, this is what happened, come with this journey with me. And it just shows the humans behind this company, kind of thing.
It's the behind the scenes, really, isn't it? It's like the front facing stuff has continued on and is serving the community, and we're doing amazing things like with the business, like workshops, masterclasses, free stuff all the time. We're continuing to raise money for charity. The business is still doing all of the things that the business has always done. So from the front, like nothing's changed. It's the behind the scenes that's been like so difficult. And I don't know, I guess like in summary, it's someone growing a startup and then getting to the point that they need to step away. And if you're you know, one woman leader, how you do that. And I haven't got the answer yet. I've
Yeah.
tried one method and it hasn't worked, so I'm trying to do something else. But if you get your business to that point and you actually need to step down or step back, how you actually do that and ensure that the business continues on in the way that you always wanted it to. It's quite hard.
And exactly why this podcast is here is to talk about you're a mum and you want to make the most of this time with your youngest, and that's the extra part to it. It's not just about making sure you step away, but it's also about that you prioritize what you want, and that's why we started this. So thank you so much for being honest about that.
Yeah, it's really that's really what I want to do, and I'm not saying because you know, that's what everybody should do, because I'm happy to say that's not what I did before. You know, when I had my 3 boys, I never did that. I never had time, and I don't regret it, and I don't think I was a bad parent because I threw myself into work.
No,
it's just where I am in my life now. I know this is my last baby. I've waited a really long time to have her, and just my priorities, I guess, have changed, and that's what I want to be doing now. And that's okay too. I don't think there's one way is better than the other way. It's a bit like birth, you know, there's no what's right is what's right for you. And at this point in my life, what's right for me is being at home with my baby whilst she's little, because I know it's only going to be a little bit of time and then she'll be at school. But that's not right for everybody. And me 10 years ago, it wasn't right for me then.
And it might not be right for you in 10 years' time, say, for example. I think that's life, and it shows that's where the people behind the businesses become the behind the scenes people. It's like we all have different things you're dealing with. And it's really puts a lot of thought into it. It's like, okay, and getting through, if you get through this phase where your passion has gone, you've been hurt. I'm excited to see in a couple of years' time.
Who knows what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen, but
no. And any advice for anyone who gets to this stage of you, who's trying to plan everything perfectly? I think because you've handled it so well, even
I
if
really
it's
don't know.
looked at.
I've been really knocked by it, so I don't know. I find it hard to think about advice because I don't feel like I've done very well with it. But I think that the planning, that's what I've really learned. Like, you can do all of the best. You know, I used to berate myself for having, you know, got accidentally pregnant and not having my life in order and being a young mum. And then I think, well, here I am at the other end of the spectrum, and I've done all of the planning that I could possibly do, you know, and it hasn't worked out. So it's kind of taught me that things are outside of your control, you know, and there's no I don't know what I'm trying to say. No point planning.
I have a hard relate to that. I didn't plan
yourself up about things because
no, Siobhan, I think you're onto something there, because with my first, I did it all wrong, I felt. And then I felt with my second, I was doing it all right, planned the maternity leave, and then he ended up very sick. And, you know, and so things changed, and that wasn't my fault, wasn't his fault. That's just how it was.
Is he all
and I
right
think
now?
oh, yes, he's perfect now.
Okay.
A 3-year-old now.
Yeah.
So perfect. He's a 3-year-old. But no, he's fantastic. But I think you're right. It's the whole thing. We try out, and as long as we try our best.
Yes.
And get through it. And I think you are truly inspiring for what you've been through and sharing it. Thank you so much.
I feel like if anyone's got advice for me, I'm not sure I'm in a position to give advice at the minute, but if anyone's got advice for me,
let's put a shout out there. Has anyone else been through something similar? Get in touch and let's start a mentorship program or something. And no, I think what you have achieved with your mission, and still having that mission after all of this, that's the best point we can end on, is that you want this mission to continue, and you're trying something new now.
And always forever grateful for the messages I get. And I don't have time to reply to them all, but I get messages every day from people, you know, sometimes the partners of the people that have given birth, and just saying that it's been so amazing and they're so grateful. And so, you know, that keeps me going for sure. So thank you to people that message, and I'm so proud of the Positive Birth Company, like not just in terms of making hypnobirthing accessible, but, you know, we're very inclusive, and I know, you know, we do support a lot of charities, And so I do feel very proud of the business that, you know, as it is. And that's why I want it to continue and I want it to do well, for the good that it does. Like you said, not about growth, but about being a good business.
Yeah.
And that's something I believe in massively. So
yeah,
I hope that's what can happen.
It had. And from someone here, I'm just one person. You've got me through 2 births and my husband as well. So thank you. And friends, I know lots of friends who are huge fans of yours. So
thank you.
And thank you for sharing today. And you will be back on this podcast to talk about the
I
next
hope
couple
so.
of years at
I
some
hope
point.
so.
I'm
And
really
I'll be like, I'm a
excited for that.
stay-at-home mum and I'm loving it.
I sold yeah. Whatever your journey is next, I'm really excited for you, and well done on getting through all of this during such a vulnerable time for you, because I do think we are vulnerable in the early years and after birth and things.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be on and giving me this opportunity to talk about it all.
No, and also, actually, I probably should say this. Where can people find you if they want to learn more? Because that's what I normally end on.
You probably won't learn more about the saga, the behind-the-scenes saga. This is just a one-off exclusive.
Learn more about hypnobirthing, because this isn't the podcast to learn about hypnobirthing.
If you'd like to learn more about hypnobirthing, we're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, The Positive Birth Company. Those, all of the places you can find out about hypnobirthing. And irrespective of all the stuff I've said behind the scenes, that stuff is really good.
Yeah.
The Freya app is on the App Store and Google Play Store.
Freya app, yes, I didn't have that with my first, and I had it with my second and loved it.
Yeah, people love the Freya app. So all of that good stuff is out there. This is a little exclusive peek behind the scenes of the drama that's been going on. But all of the stuff that's out there to help people is there.
Yeah, and I couldn't recommend it highly. So thank you for bringing that and managing the chaos behind the scenes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Bump to Business Owner. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do rate, review, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us to connect with more mums and business owners. You can DM me on @BumpToBusinessOwner on Instagram, and I'll be back next week.